Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charlie Nicklin. I'm the Chief Exec of IAgrE, and I'd like to thank you all for joining our first presentation of 2023. I'd like to welcome Ian Beecher-Jones for our lecture today. Ian has spent many years working in and promoting precision ag techniques to the farming sector. Over the last few years, he's focused his attention on the wine industry and in particular how to apply these precision techniques to a vineyard. Ian has achieved this by using a blend of existing technologies and bringing them together into an eVineyard management system. So just before Ian starts, you're all currently muted. If you would like to ask questions, please use the chat function at the bottom of the screen. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll unmute you so you can ask in person. Okay, over to you, Ian.
Brilliant, thanks, Charlie. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's good to meet you all. Recognise one or two names on the list, and it's nice to catch up with you again. Since it's about 12-15 years ago, I think, when I last met a number of you when I was Director General of BAGMA, the Machinery Dealers Trade Association. And when I left there, we got involved in precision agriculture and in different parts of the world. And it took me to sort of Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, just learning about precision ag technologies. And then the opportunity of a vineyard sort of came up in our local village, and we live just outside Henley-on-Thames in South Oxfordshire. And that's when we planted our vineyard. But before I go into what we're actually doing, I just thought it might be worth sharing with you what the UK wine market is like at this moment. Some of you may well be very versed on this, others may not. I think it is a bit of a surprise when you look at the UK viticulture market, that there's almost 4,000 hectares under vine in the UK, and it's up 70% in the last 5 years, and there's just over 1 million vines a year being planted at the moment. It's quite considerable in different parts of the world. Moving further north, it's becoming more exciting for growers. There's 897 vineyards as of the end of last year, with 197 wineries, and you can see the split there on the screen of where the vineyards are. And there's one or two now getting as far north as Scotland, and there's a sort of it's only a small vineyard, but there is one there as well, which is quite intriguing. If we look at the volumes of bottles that are produced, there's almost 9 million bottles that are produced in the UK, 68% sparkling and 32% still. So just sort of going up. Export markets are pretty important as well, and becoming more so. It's only 4%, but being able to ship English and sparkling wine out of the country is certainly helps it from a domestic point of view. So that's really the size of the UK market. And when we planted our vineyards, our 2.2 hectares, and the 0.2 here is we think it's really important. And we were above the average size of a vineyard in the UK. And that was in 2019 when we planted, but now we are below the average size. It's up to about 4 hectares now, so we see how it's changed sort of considerably. We've done something sort of really reasonably unusual for a vineyard our size, is plant 7 varieties. Normally, if a vineyard that size, we'll just plant the traditional Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier and Chardonnay for sparkling wine. We've gone 7 varieties. We thought it would make our wine growing experience a little bit more interesting, and we're just hopefully going to dig the foundations for our winery building the end of this year, beginning of next. So we've got 8,769 vines, about 70 kilometers of wire holding the vines in place, 1,800 posts and 92 rows. And when we planted, we used the tractor, and pressed the button too quickly. We used RTK on the tractor. To plant, and the majority of vineyards now are planted with RTK. You can see we're on a gentle slope here. The soil is chalk at the bottom and thick gnarly clay at the top, which isn't ideal, and it certainly wasn't ideal this year. or last year in the drought. So the majority of vines are planted. You can see the RTK unit on the machine there as the guys are planting. And there's a big furrow at the front. The vines are popped in and then closed up behind. And yeah, it speeds the planting up considerably. And so 70% of the vines were planted by machine in 6 hours, but we had a problem with the ordering of the vines, and then we had to do the other 30% by hand, and it took 2 guys 3 days to do it. So it's quite considerable the speed in which vines can be put in by a machine. But the thing that sort of staggered me is I asked for the USB stick of all the positions of the vines at the end of the day. And the driver and the manager so looked at me as I was coming from Mars. Nobody had ever asked for the GPS positions of the vines, and it seems strange that we're going to have a product that was going to be in the ground for 30 years, but at least we've got all of this technology available to us, and nothing was being recorded. And this is where sort of my mission started, as to we need to digitize the vineyard in a better way. And can we accurately record the GPS position of every aspect of the vineyard, whether it's the soil sampling, whether it's scanning, whether it's sensing, drones, robots, and the like? If we don't know where the position is, it makes that difficult. And if we're able to bring all that GPS data together, we can start to integrate digital services ideally into one platform. But let's start collecting data accurately and move it on from there. So I came across a project in Australia called Collaboraculture, and they were having exactly the same challenge. And it looks very, very mundane and simple. That what this slide shows is the first instance, they as developers and tech enthusiasts there, they just opened up the vineyard and said, right, what do we call all of these parts of the vineyard? Because if we're tech developers and vineyard owners call different parts of the vineyard something different to what we're used to, then it's not going to work. And so this sort of formed the foundations from a developer's point of view of how we were going to start digitizing the vineyard successfully and accurately. So we looked at the field boundary, and then we looked at the blocks that we've got, and then we've got the varieties, and so we can start to clip satellite imagery to those varieties if we could. And then we got the undervine area, which is managed differently to the mid-row area, and we aligned all of this with a Collaboraculture model. And I did all of this manually to start off with. And then we got our vine rows here, and this was just a way in which I could use some software a couple of years ago to make those happening. But then what we eventually got to was a individual vines and individual posts survey. Some of it was done by GPS, some of it was done by algorithm, and I'll show you how we went through and did that in a second. But this forms the foundation and the infrastructure from which we could then go and do all sorts of other things. So when we started our surveying, what did we use? We used a Trimble Catalyst, which some of you may have come across. It's RTK, but it's a reasonably affordable solution for people farmers to use. Then I tried something called a Trimble R12i, which was survey grade and had a lot more features and functionalities to it. And then we just tried a drone to gather data. And the Trimble Catalyst, £500, looked reasonably well, but it took a huge amount of time just to do our vineyard, our 92 rows, top and bottom, because you have to get the little bubble level at the top, and there's no way that anyone was going to spend the time that I did to be able to get the positions accurately recorded, even though it was an affordable solution. Then we tried the R12i. This was fantastic. You could whiz around the vineyard much faster because it got the tilt compensation at the bottom of it, and you could gather data really well. And so that was much more much more efficient, but it came with a price tag. That £19,000 was the price a couple of years ago when we did this. So slightly different. So we had to look at the options. And then we tried the drone, but the drone actually was not a lot of use. It wasn't set up correctly, and the imagery wasn't right, and the algorithms to gather the data points wasn't right either. But both of the Catalyst and the R12i created a CSV file, of which then we put into a little piece of software from Slovenia called eVineyard, and we see the points on the screen there. All have got identifiable areas, and we then created a block, and then we drew some rows in there. That was our AB lines, if you like, and then we asked the software to draw the rows at the prescribed row width of 2.4 meters, and because we'd surveyed them in, they were nice and accurate. Then we did our cross posts so we could form our grid template. We then put the posts in, then we put the vines in, and this was the result. Now they're not going to be 100% perfect, but I would say that we're probably 90% organized with where we want the vines to be. And if we want to go and edit them, we can do that in QGIS or something else from there. So now I was sort of pretty confident that we'd got our infrastructure in place. Now, if we had a recording mechanism on the planter, we wouldn't have to go through this. And I now know that there are planters that are just about starting to record the GPS positions of vines and posts at vineyard implementation. So it'll make this process a whole load easier. But the project that we were involved with in Australia was working really well in the fact that it actually put up a GitHub repository and a schema for the digital infrastructure. So we were able to line our vineyard with the schema that was being developed in Australia, and this was all open source. So any developer could get involved with this and start developing software if they wanted to, with an infrastructure and a schema that made sense, whichever part of the world that you were going to work in. And this formed the basis from what we were going to do. And this is the data platform. Looks very simple, and that's the joys of it. It is the simplicity of it, but this underpins every single thing that we would ever want to do in the vineyard, because we can assign an attribute to a vine or a post or an area, a mid-row, under vine area, wherever we wanted to. And this is hugely exciting. It's the project it's gathering, hopefully going to gather a little bit of speed before long. But what we wanted to do was take their theory and put this into practice. And so we wanted to record everything from an RTK point of view, and then group them, so the vines into blocks and rows, and so we could assign it all accurately and assign it once. Because I don't want to have to spend my time if I want to take on another piece of software or a robot or anything like that, that I have to do this every single time. And so this is sort of developed now into a website that's in Australia where it's totally shareable. That any software provider wants to work in the viticulture or orchard sector, or any row crops, we're able to share a grower's data with their permission. The grower has total control over their data, and this is providing us with an amazing base from which we can start to develop. Or programmers can develop softwares, integrate with current software that's available. And we're sort of leading the charge on this as JoJo's and as the Digital Vineyard, because I've really learned from the broadacre agricultural sector that if you don't have a shareable infrastructure with grower farm, field, AB lines and boundaries in a broadacre perspective, then it becomes hard to do other things. And that'll be exactly the same in viticulture. If we don't have the infrastructure that's shareable, so growers can take on new services, then it won't allow for the growth of technology in the way that it should. So this is JoJo sitting on the Open Ag Maps platform, and it's all in beta stage at the moment, hasn't been released properly. But this is where I bought the rows into FarmWorks, the old Trimble software, so we can see them there. These are all the AB lines that were created from the platform, which are great. And then I've taken them into the New Holland software, and so we've got a link with that platform. And then this is an eVineyard, and this is where I can record everything that we do in the vineyard by the row or by the block or by the whole vineyard to improve the recordability of what I do. What we do in the vineyard, and that makes life from a recording point of view, from a traceability point of view, a lot easier if we're able to record by the row. Some people don't bother; they'll just do it by the block. But if we have volunteers and we have people helping us out, it's just easier to just good to know which rows they did, whether they did a better job or a worse job than the employed staff that we get into to do a lot of the work. So it just helps us over time to record what activities are going on in the vineyard. And so we saw the dry guidance lines that were created in Open Ag Maps. We brought those into the Trimble monitor, and we can see the vine rows there as well. So whichever platform that we were working from, we're starting to make connections. And this is a not-for-profit, or Open Ag Maps is a not-for-profit, as is a Collaboraculture, because it has a lot of value here, but it's it could be commercialized, but the idea of it is owned by the growers, it is owned by industry, because then we can all benefit from it and work with software providers and build services on top. And this, I'm hoping, we're hoping that it'll encourage greater uptake of technology by growers in different parts of the world, if depending on how they go. And this is another platform, Platfarm, an Australian tech company recording the operations that you do in the vineyard. And it's exactly the same. All the row numbers are there in the way that it was put on the Open Ag Maps platform. And so we've got, I've surveyed once, or grower will survey once, put it on the platform, and can share it loads and loads to loads and loads of places as and when the providers come in. And this is, I think this is quite revolutionary. We don't have to rely on a manufacturer to do the work for us. It's a hosted site that will make a big difference, and we can start to look at drone navigation paths as well, as and when they come on. And this is we've done a lot of this at JoJo's through an Innovate UK project that we won last year. And the idea is to help join all of this up together so we can have this API link into, we've got Trimble there, Antibot Robotics from Essex IAgrE, Epicenter drones, outfield drones, and we're looking at our Adopt a Vine scheme from a digital perspective. And so Innovate UK, we're kind enough to award us this project to work with our partners on the right there. And I think when we started this project, a number of the partners sort of looked up going, right, well, this does look a little bit bonkers. What's he on about? Why is this all going to work? And what's the point of an infrastructure model? But I think we've all learned a lot from each other, and the value of that infrastructure model being shareable. And each of those, whether it be eVineyard, Antibot, Outfield, are going to start using it and in their software as well. Because what it really does, it brings context. It's contextualized maps. So whatever data that we've got, we can put the row numbers on top, and we can have a look at maps and just make a lot more sense of them. And so that's the project once we've done it at Jojo's, then we've got a neighbouring vineyard, Harrow and Hope, at Marlow, and we're going to start from scratch from them and take them through the whole process. They're not digital at all. They have no engagement with the testing process, so it'll be a good exercise for us to be able to go to the vineyard and take them down this digital route. And so one of the last summer, I was out just testing one of the a survey process. We were just using a handheld RTK device, and you can see the survey, the antenna on top of the post there, and that was the first time that we'd used RTKF farming and CHC navigation equipment, and yeah, it worked well. We were pleasantly surprised. Good accuracy and good reliability, but most importantly, it was good for a grower to take it on themselves. Then once we start to get into activities in the vineyard, Bitwise Agronomy is a startup based out of Tasmania, and they use GoPros as their data gathering tool. So we can see a couple of GoPros on the front of the tractor here, and we point those towards the vines. At the beginning of the season, it's lower down, and as we go through the season, we're looking more at the canopy. And what Bitwise do is they're developing technology to count nodes and count cordons and count bunches in the vineyard. And this is really, really important because we can start to develop our yield estimations at this stage. So as soon as we start to count and see what's there, we can start to estimate our yield. As long as the season carries on, do we have enough shoots? Are they growing in the right way? And we can start to, once we can count them, we can start to estimate from there. So this is a vine. This is in Tasmania. And so much older vines, there's a bit more of a challenge in the UK, and certainly with ours, because we've got a lot smaller vines and smaller shoots at this stage. But this is what we're looking to count. And once we start counting, we can make comparisons. Do we need to thin out some shoots if we've got too many later on? And then when we come to spring, frost is a challenge for us, and so once the buds have started to count, we have to protect them from frost. And this is one piece of technology we're testing last year out of Belgium, and this was infrared lights, where it was warming the plant rather than the air. It was rather than the convection heating and warming the air that warms the shoots. And the buds. This is actually warming the buds themselves. We didn't actually get down to below freezing when we were testing this, but the system does look really encouraging, because if we don't use that, then we have to use candles. And whilst they look very pretty, aren't particularly environmentally friendly, and it takes a long time to put them put them out in the vineyard and then light them and then put them back up afterwards. So hopefully we can find a way of working with the infrared technology a little more than we have in the past. And we're also looking at irrigation as well, where we spray water over the buds, and that freezes. That technology has been around a little while, and there's a number of vineyards got that, and we're looking at that as well to see as a comparison between the two systems. We were talking just before we started about the drought in last year. This was the vineyard in August. It was a bit short of water, and we had to hand water every plant, every vine a couple of times, and so that was quite considerable. We were putting some food with them as well, just to try and keep them going. We probably lost 20% of our crop in the clay areas, just because the roots weren't established enough. We're only in year 4. We were only in year 4 then, and the plants in the chalk areas did really well, but in the clay areas it didn't do so well at all. But hopefully we'll take the positive from it, that they had to work hard for their water, so the roots will be established then for the future. On the front of the tractor here again, we had not only the GoPros, but also Topcon ultrasonic sensors, and they're measuring canopy and density of the crop, and also the crown of the vines as well. More of the crowns research was being done in Italy. We were doing more of the canopy here, but it was using ultrasonic sensors, which was quite interesting. We had a PhD student on the left as you look at the screen there, Michael Williams from Brighton, doing some research on the variability in vineyards. And the guy in the middle is a chap called Rob Bramley from Australia, from the research organisations out there. And it was quite fortuitous because Michael had been reading a number of Rob's papers and on variability, because Rob's a precision farming expert in viticulture, and Michael happened to be there when Rob was there. Very fortuitous, but it was one of those moments of meeting your lecturer, and the chats that they had were absolutely brilliant. Really interesting. And this is what Michael was picking up from his hyperspectral drone scanning, just to see where the variability was in the vineyard. We had hoped to help him out with some yield mapping, and we were using NFC tags on the crates, where we were scanning, got the NFC tags on the crates. We're then using the phone to record the GPS location against the NFC tag, and then bring it back to the weigh station, where we would weigh the grapes, take a photograph of them just to understand the quality, and then produce a yield map. But all we produced from the GPS scans from the phone were these very, very bizarre circles of data, and we have no idea how the software managed to do this, or how the GPS managed to record them in this way. So we unfortunately failed miserably when it came down to yield mapping the vines, which was a real pity, because it would have been fascinating to see how they worked. And if anybody's got any idea what these data points, GPS points, and why they appear in this shape, I'd be very, very interested to know, because it's made no sense to anybody that I've spoken to. Then the crates we put them in the van and on a trailer. We then take them down to Langham's in Dorset, and they do the pressing for us. About 4 years ago, they won the International Sparkling Winemaker of the Year, beating Maison Mum, and Veuve Clicquot won it the year before. So we're in good hands with their winery facilities. They've got they started with 30 acres. They just planted another 50 acres of vines. They're doing great guns. You have to taste it as well. It would be rude not to taste the juice, and that is great experience to taste the juice of the grapes just as soon as they're pressed. So we harvest by hand. We're only small. We're starting to see now, this is the second New Holland harvester that's in the country. Denbigh's, that Chris mentioned earlier on. Denbigh's have had one for a good number of years. This is the second one working in Essex, and there's about 3 or 4 other manufacturers or 3 or 4 other machines in the country. And we're seeing an increase in mechanical harvesting, mainly because of labour at harvest time. We have to be pretty swift at harvest time, as we can all appreciate. And mechanical harvesting, we're going to see an increase of. One of the other things that is proving to be a challenge is cover cropping, and it's on the increase in vineyards, certainly across the country here, but in other parts of the world as well. We're seeing a lot of vine rows taken out in France from the old traditional style to double the width, just to manage and cover the soil better. I look for a direct drill in the UK or anywhere in the world, and we couldn't find one. And the vineyard manager from Harrow and Hope, he was doing the same thing, and he couldn't find a drill either. So what we did is we designed and made our own. And so we've got a machine here that will plant the cover crops. It's got a liquid fertilizer applicator, and it's got an undervine seeder as well. that we've got, and it's we can take some legs off it, take the legs off it, and make it into a subsoiler. This was just the prototype model, but yeah, it's proving very successful. And in the field, this is what our vineyard looked like before I sowed at the end of October, and that was after, and that was 1 week after. So it sort of covers up beautifully well. The traditional way of doing this would be to spray off, cultivate a couple of times, seed, and then roll. And there's just the windows of opportunity, as we all know, are getting less and less. And so yeah, it's this drill has certainly proved valuable to us and to Harrow at Harrow and Hope, who are going organic. So this is even more important to them. We're not organic, and I don't think we will, but for both of us, it's proved a very useful machine. And next month we're off down to Australia to with Innovate UK on a trade mission to try and find manufacturing facilities down there, and test the machine out in Australian and New Zealand conditions. So we're quite excited by this. That yeah, little old UK, not a powerhouse when it comes to viticulture, is taking machine down to some much more prominent and larger growing wine areas because of some technology that we've built and designed in the UK. That's quite exciting. We've also been looking at Starlink as well. Just been helping out a local guy. Got the 2 Starlink dishes, version 1 and version 2, and the speeds are phenomenal. And if you do have internet connection challenges where you are, then certainly looking at Starlink is something that I would encourage you to do. Outfield are an IAgrE epicenter member. They do a huge amount of works in orchards around the world, again from a yield forecasting perspective. And through the IAgrE epicenter, they're looking at working and trialing in vineyards as to what they can do there. So they're flying just a straightforward DJI Mavic Pro, I think that is, over the vineyard and gathering the data. I haven't seen any results back from that yet, but it's great that we're seeing other technologies from other sectors coming into the vineyard to see what information we can gather. This is Antibot, the robots company out of Essex. This is one of their robots. This is well, I think it's the Navigator, this one. So this will go up and down the vineyards, and they'll attach cameras to it to be able to gather data and see what's going on within the vineyard and on the plant, and then send it for processing. This is the I can't remember what it's called now. Oh, name's suddenly gone. But this is the robot that will move crates around the vineyard or orchard, and so you're able to move the crates around autonomously, and you're able to send. People are able to put it into the crate, send it off, put it on the robot, and then send it to the weigh station or packing house, wherever it needs to go to. Yeah, the developments have been great. It's been really fascinating working with these young engineers, and yeah, sort of 23, 24, 25-year-olds have no experience of agriculture at all before they started working with Antibot, and probably have never stepped on a field. But they've come out to the vineyard 2 or 3 times. They've had some knockbacks, but they get knocked down and get back up again. And the energy and enthusiasm for the sector and for our industry is absolutely phenomenal. And it's really encouraging of the energy and enthusiasm that these youngsters are bringing to technological development within our industry. And if it wasn't for technology, they wouldn't give us a second look. So technology from a recruitment point of view is I think key to encouraging the next generation of people into our industry. We also looked at creating a digital twin. This is a company called NavViz, who do a huge amount of work in the with buildings and in the construction sector. And this trial failed miserably as well. We hadn't got a background that we could work, but yeah, it was just trying something to see if we could create a digital twin of the vineyard using some technology from another part, another industry. But that one didn't work, but others will. These are guys from the IAgrE epicenter and drone pilots. And this is the hyperspectral sensor and LiDAR camera that they had flying around. And this was, yeah, I think the camera on here is about £250,000, something like that. A huge piece of technology that was flying around. And yeah, it's quite a beast when it gets going. And these were the guys from Norway who were piloting it and training the guys to get it going. So it's some drone to carry that payload. And then on the same day we had a vertical takeoff and landing drone that was from a plane perspective. So yeah, totally different, but this had a multispectral camera on it and was picking up and gathering data for us. And this was some of the imagery from those cameras. So this is an RGB ortho image, and this is a satellite 3D image from those drones, and this is an elevation or image. I haven't done it, to be honest. I haven't done a lot with these. I only got these images a couple of days ago. So what's going to happen to them next, I'm not 100% sure. But it's just sort of fascinating to me, the level of resolution that you can get and the detail that you can get from these cameras that are flying over, and it's picking up all sorts of things in the vineyard. This was just after harvest, so we'd done the work, but the vines themselves were still in a pretty good state. But we're starting to see all sorts of variation in the vineyard. And the ability of these of this LiDAR technology to be able to pick up detail is quite phenomenal. And I think the idea of this is to start putting all of this data together in one computer at the IAgrE epicenter for analysis to then work out how we start to make decisions around it. The one challenge that we have is, it's great, we've acquired the data, we can start to analyze it, but then how do we apply it? And variable rate machines there isn't a huge amount of them at the moment. There's a good number of robot mowers in different parts of the world. They're starting to appear, and there's the robot show in Toulouse in a couple of weeks' time. There was the one in San Francisco before Christmas, and we're seeing a huge increase in the amount of robots that are in the sort of horticultural sector as a whole. And I would see that we're starting. Mowing is a place that robots are going to play an important role, because it's not a particularly skilled job, and if we can have a robot with a mower and a couple of cameras on it gathering data, then it's doing great work for us. Staffing is an issue. Hence the uptake in the number of robots that we'll see. And so this was just the imagery of the cross section of the vineyard again, and yeah, it's really quite revealing as to a bit of the steepness of it and the way that it's looking through the eyes of a camera. And from there, this was a multispectral NDVI image. And what we're seeing here is where we've got the red areas. You think, oh, there's something wrong there, but that's actually the cover crop in between the rows. And once we get our contextualized digital map of all our rows with our row numbers, and we can overlay that onto this, it will bring a lot more context to what the map is doing, because our rows are 2.4 meters wide. And it's very difficult to identify where those areas are at that level of detail from here. So being able to overlay my row map with on top of any of these maps will be hugely valuable, because I can put context to it straight away. So yeah, plant classification. throwing bits sort of coming from other sort of another computer, and we can see here that we've got areas on the vines that, again, this is the cover crop in between, and it was just a slight difference in cover crop density, and that's why we're seeing different colors there. One row was cut for harvest and the other wasn't. This was a 2D image extracted from a 3D map, which looks quite hazy at the moment, but it's a start, and I'm sure they'll be able to improve on it from there. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to talk viticulture technology at the British Argentinian Chamber of Commerce. Never thought we'd be working with IAgrE Antibot and Outfield, talking to wine growers from Argentina about viticulture technology. But they were super keen to learn what we're up to and what we're doing here. And I think underlying this, it's a case of the question is always why. Why are we doing it? And I was lucky enough to sort of share. Rob Bramley, who I mentioned before, shared this slide with me. And it's just a vineyard in Australia from the Treasury Wine Estates. And they'd split up their, this was about sort of, what was it, 10 hectares, 12 hectares. And they split it up. And this part of the vineyard was producing wine at $14 a bottle. Those areas were producing bottles at £1,600 a bottle. This one was at £3,500, and that one was at £5,000 that was the value, wasn't the value of the bottle. That was the value of the wine from those areas. So we got $14, $35, $72, and $175 a bottle. And using variable rate technology, this is what they were able to extract of value from that piece of vineyard. And this really brought it home to me as to why we need to start looking at technology and use these sensors and techniques that we have and that are coming onto the market. It certainly we won't be able to do it in JoJo's. We're too small, but there's vineyards in the UK that will certainly be able to look at this area of technology. And yeah, the wine value increase in that area is $470,000, which was really quite phenomenal. And it's always stuck with me as to why we start to look at this. So what are we doing this year? I've got a robot and a drone there. We're going to be using that this year. They'll be tethered and they'll be working together in the vineyard. So we're getting data from the ground and the air all at the same time. Looking at the infrastructure model that we've got, making better use of that. Reliable sort of yield mapping again, third time lucky. Hopefully we will collect that data. Bringing data together better for better analysis, using whichever provider we can do. Looking at our digital adopter vine service of how we can commercialize data and take more information to our customers and consumers. Looking at better use of vineyard software and data recording, and see if we can use one piece of data 2 or 3 times to make it worthwhile. And then we're looking at variable rate application, probably not putting product on it this year, but just using it water, and see if we can actually make our sprayer work from a variable rate perspective from the data that we've collected. And then robotic mowing. There's a company wants to try robotic mowers, which will be quite interesting. So those are the plans for this year. But underpinning all of that is that we're going to be, as in the next month, announced as a IAgrE epicenter epic farm. And so that'll allow us to have just talk more technology with more companies and trial what technology is out there at JoJo's, because I think if some vineyards or owners don't put themselves forward to improve technology, then we will never grow and develop. And it's something that I really enjoy. How much money we make out of it is going to be the $1 million question. Probably not a lot, but it's good fun. And as long as we can blend it in with the other part of the business and sell more of our wine, then it'll be worthwhile. It's all part of the story as to how we go about making JoJo's wine. And this was the first release that we had at the end of last year. So yeah, very excited to sell that. And that's just sort of a minute over. Sorry, Sarah, but hopefully we got time for a few questions now from the audience. And I got some message in the chat from Tim. How is the soil water described within an open vineyard across another? So we did the standard soil tests before we started, in the same way that others would, as we do in broadacre agriculture, and we just applied it. We did most of the work beforehand, before we planted, but we've gone back since and put on some organic matter, and we've used I can't remember the names of the products, just left me, but we'll use the drill to be able to put in liquid fertilizers in the root zone through the subsoiler, and also if we want to through cover cropping.
It's really a question about the data sharing, and particularly where you've got ontology frameworks, creating a common ontology across multiple description frameworks. Has that created a huge problem, and how have you resolved that?
No, from the open, there's not a lot of data sharing at this particular moment in time when it comes to that. It's all wonderfully collecting data digitally with the majority of vineyards has been pretty slow, to be quite honest. And soil sampling has been done before people plant.
It's not. It's not really collecting data, is it? It's really describing the data that people are collecting.
Yeah,
so
and doing any of that, it's unless it's a research station, then not a lot of that descriptive work has been, not as far as I know. I'm sure there's papers on it, but not a great deal that I've come across, to be quite honest.
Across all industry sectors, I think that's common. Yeah.
There's no difference in viticulture.
No. Thank you.
Tim, what are the key benefits of digitization will bring? I think it's about recordability, and then we're able to make comparisons from one year to the next, because that crop is going to be there for 30 years, and we can gather a good amount of data around it. We want to try and reduce variation if we can, and that's through pruning, that's through soil techniques, and looking after the soil properly. But is there anything else that we can pick up along the way? Robots, I think, are going to be the first part of digitalization because of labor. And that's the challenge that all sectors have. And so robots will come in certainly to do the more mundane tasks, the less skilled. So that's where mowing comes in. But we then start to look at maybe at trimming, sort of leaf trimming, leaf stripping. At different times of the year, are we able to automate that? And so it's at the early stages, but because we've got our digital infrastructure, we can start to work around that. We can develop tools to work with machines and robots, maybe a little bit easier than broadacre can, because we're in a fixed crop, we know where it is, and everything it stays in the same place. The years change, as we all know. But hopefully, because it's in the same place, it makes that a little bit easier to work with.
Thanks, Ian.
Mark, a UK Innovate, yeah. I think it's been really interesting working with UK Innovate UK, and the fact that we've got the digitization project, which is one thing, and then the viticulture, the SREX drill that we're taking down to Australia. And the fact that, yeah, we're probably punching way above our weight, but I think we're giving a bit of a vision as to what the UK can do from a vineyard point of view. And a number of, I think, comparisons with New Zealand can be made. And we're probably where New Zealand was 30 years ago, with our growth and development of the sector as a generalization. And I think if we can use the technology right and use our experiences and the great minds that we have within universities and within companies and the next generation of youngsters coming in, then yeah, we can make a difference not only to viticulture but also other row crops and other crops, and make us a sort of good hub of what's going on. The question was, how did we validate or correlate the information that we got? I'm still waiting for top. I literally scanned it, sent it to TopCon, and they had a look and analysed it. Whether they'll be doing it again this year, I don't know. I think they may have been doing a little bit, making more comparisons with their Italian customers from there, but I don't know. I haven't heard what where their plans are. But it was yeah, just throw a sensor on the front of the tractor and see what we get. But little PV arrays, yeah, it's interesting. We are going to put PV on our vineyard, on the winery when we make that, and that'll be as and when we get robots inside, then we can charge them up from that point of view. Catchment of rainfall, where we are in an AONB, then it's an absolute no from a planning permission perspective, and a number of vineyards are in sort of AONB areas, whether it's South Downs National Park or others. And so I think that's a challenge. We might be able to do it in other areas if there's the incentives to do that.
Is it feasible though? I mean, is it something that's realistic to actually improve the water catchment and also, you know, control weed growth and provide a power source?
The challenge of it is that grapes need a lot of sun. And so whilst you have the arrays there, it's catching sun for everything else. You're restricting the water going to, restricting the sunshine going to the grapes, and that's really where what you need. And so I did see something on social media the other day where they managed to put some PV arrays over some vegetable, some row crops. And we're combining it as well, I think. And so you never say never, but you don't know what's available. But I think it'll be more of a planning issue than anything else in the first instance from there. Function of the cover crop to control runoff and soil erosion, yes, in certain places, because probably less in the UK, but certainly in other parts of the world, bare soil viticulture is where it's been. That is changing rapidly, and so being able to grow that sward to help and manage runoff is key. But also looking at soil and increasing the organic matter within the soil. All plants need it, as we know, and are we able to do it organically, improve the soil structure? Yeah, we got we will spray 12 times a year, and that's going on the same tram line, so we have to try and measure that. Organic growers will be significantly more than that. They're in the late 20s, early 30s of spraying, and so to be able to manage the mid-row area with crops is going to be super key and super important to them, and we can do that with plants. So it's exciting from that point of view to see the developments in cover crop growth. From there, have we connected the data from the harvester to each row? Yeah, that would, from a mechanical point of view on the New Holland harvester, I don't think there's actually a commercial machine harvester that is yet using weigh scales. There's a number being tried, and some have worked well and some have worked less well. We're hand picking, and that's what we're trying to do with the crates. But as you saw with this slide, you try to show all your successes, but equally you have to show your failures as well when it comes down to technology. And what happened there in the vineyard with the NFC tag and crate recording positions, we have absolutely no idea. It's crazy. From that point of view, but hopefully this year we'll make it work. Tim, you said our vine spacing is we're at 2.4, and yeah, some people have the trend in the UK when the markets, the viticulture started over here, a lot of it was bought over from France, so we were working on quite narrow rows, but over time they've got wider. for a number of reasons. Once you get a sort of above 3 meters, and there's a number above 3 meters, you can start to use conventional machines, which are a hell of a lot cheaper than viticulture machinery. We only have a limited space, so we went for 2.4, which was again wider than most around here a few years ago. And it helps. We're on a slope, so we've got good air movement, and from a disease management point of view, that makes a huge difference to reduce the humidity in the crop, and it just gives you a little bit more room to move. Yes, we would have lost a couple of rows, but from a mechanization point of view, it's a lot easier to work in there, and it doesn't from a visual point of view, it doesn't look quite as cramped. It works well with our site, and each site can be different with where they're at. Any concern about moisture and nutrient competition between cover crops and vines? Yeah, absolutely. There's an enthusiast from a vineyard called Everflight, and he was absolutely convinced that cover crops were the right way to go 2 or 3 years ago. Really knowledgeable guy, but he's changing his thoughts and going, actually, are the cover crops taking too much nutrition away from the vines? And I think we've got a huge amount to learn in this space as to what plants what crops to plant, and how they will work in against the competition of the vines. The advice that I've had is, if you've got a healthy cover crop, then you've got a healthy crop around it, of whichever crop that is. But yeah, we got a lot to learn in that area from there. Biochar, yeah, a number of people are using biochar from a soil nutrition point of view, and putting that as a liquid into there. But I haven't sort of looked at it from a drought and a frost protection point of view, and that would be a fascinating one to try. That is a new one if it works. So be quite interested to follow up on that one. Antibot, robotic hauling for other manufacturers. We're as sort of a test site for IAgrE Centre. We will look at anybody who is an IAgrE member who wants to get involved with this. Then yeah, always keen to look for others as to what we can contribute to their development, and how they can fit practically within a vineyard environment. So yeah, always keen to learn what great technology is out there. Spatial data for interpreting spatial data for variable vineyard management is the key. Is there enough scientific information in the UK to support the decisions required? Absolutely not. Because we're so young and so new, yeah, we're able to take information from other colder weather climate growing countries and use that. But we've got East Malling. I have been to East Malling, which do a huge amount of work in this area, and it'll only improve. And I think through projects of what we're doing, it'll help, and there'll be other vineyards doing their own little projects in their own little way. And so I'm sure we're all contributing to that knowledge bank, all of which is super important with where we're at. And it's a great environment to be involved with. Lots of enthusiastic people, really willing to share thoughts and experiences, and yeah, we're just doing our little bit as best as we can. And yeah, we'll make mistakes, as we've seen. There's always lots to learn, but yeah, it's a pleasure to share what we're doing with you guys, and hopefully it's helped give you a little bit of a picture of where the UK viticulture market is. But anyone who's interested in this, certainly, if you haven't tried any English sparkling wine, do so, or Welsh sparkling wine. It's a fantastic product, and surprise is the majority, because I think when people drink ours, they've gone, oh, that's nice. And one, from it's a new grower, but two, it's English as well. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of this wonderful industry. And I think that is about it.
Brilliant. That was absolutely superb. I didn't know whether you were going to answer Alan's question, but we are up to the hour, so if we probably need to just close it there. But yeah, that was incredible. I think you can tell that by the amount of questions we've got as well.
I will take that as a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting. Wasn't what I was expecting at all. So thank you so much for that. I think everybody found it interesting, as I said, because the amount of questions. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you can join us for our next lecture on the 14th of Feb, which I'm sure you'll all remember because that's a very special day for some people, I'm sure. We'll be joined by Steve Noble from a company called Electrofit Industrial Solutions. So Steve's going to be talking about repowering used diesel equipment with electric drive lines, so doing machine conversions to give them a new lease of life. So I think that'll be quite interesting as well. So all I have to say is thanks again, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.